It is a Tuesday afternoon, and you are standing in a burger place you didn't plan to stop at. You drove past it. Then you turned around. The total comes to $14, and you tap your card before the number fully registers. You grab the bag, you eat in the car. By the time you pull back onto the road, you have already forgotten it happened. That is the design. $14 is engineered to disappear. It is small enough to spend without deciding, and gone fast enough that no receipt ever feels like a record. You don't track it. Nobody tracks it. Tracking $14 feels like counting raindrops. It feels like exactly the kind of anxious, joyless thing you promised yourself you'd never become.
But hold that $14 for a second. Don't spend it yet. Because this is a story about the exchange rate nobody posts on the wall. The one that's been running quietly in the background of every small purchase you've made since you were 25. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every $14 you spend in your 30s is not $14. It is $140 at 65. Every $200 dinner is $2,000. Every $800 weekend is $8,000. Not because of anything dramatic, not because of a mistake, because of a number so simple it almost doesn't deserve to be called math. The exchange rate is 10-1. Here's where it comes from. A dollar invested at 35 and left alone at the market's long-run average of 7% per year will roughly triple by the time you're 65. That's 30 years of compounding. But a dollar invested at 25 gets 40 years. And 40 years at 7% doesn't just add more, it multiplies differently. The curve bends in a way that 30 years never quite reaches. A dollar at 25 becomes roughly $15 by 65. A dollar at 35 becomes roughly $7.50. The gap between those two numbers is the decade between them. 10 years. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. Spend a dollar in your early 30s instead of planting it at 25, and you didn't lose a dollar. You lost $10. Most people never learn this exchange rate. Not because it's hidden, because nobody thinks about a burger as a retirement decision. Nobody stands at a register and does that math. The $14 looks like lunch. It is lunch. And it is also, quietly, $140 you will never have at 65. Both things are true at the same time. That's the part that doesn't fit on a receipt.
There is someone else in this story. He is not real. He never existed. But the math knows exactly where he is standing. He is the version of you who knew the exchange rate at 25. Not because he was smarter, not because he earned more. He just saw a number once, in a video he almost didn't finish, and it landed somewhere it couldn't be unfiled. He didn't stop eating. He didn't track every dollar. He just got mildly, permanently suspicious of the $14 version of things. He started cooking 4 nights a week instead of 3. He kept the car he had instead of upgrading when the lease ended. He stopped buying things on the walk between the parking garage and wherever he was going. None of it felt like sacrifice. None of it had a name. It was just a quiet rounding down, again and again, across 1,000 ordinary moments. And he routed the difference, not into something clever, into the most boring index fund that existed. The whole market, one button, no opinion needed. He freed up $300 a month. That was it. $300. You spend more than that on things you can't name by Thursday.
He put it in at 25. He let it run. By 35, he had roughly $50,000 in that account. By 45, with the market doing what it does over long enough periods, he had something close to $140,000. By 55, the account is pushing $290,000 and growing faster every year because it's now large enough to earn more in a good year than he adds by hand. By 65, the ghost lands at just over $570,000. From $300 a month and a mild suspicion about the $14 version of things. Now, here's you. Same salary, same apartment. You spent the $300 the way everyone does, spread across 100 tiny moments that each felt reasonable. The lunch out, the ride instead of the walk, the version of the item that was slightly nicer than necessary. Nothing extravagant, nothing you'd be embarrassed to explain, just $300 a month, living its ordinary life in your ordinary hands. Gone by the end of the month the way it always is.
You're 35 now, and you've just learned the exchange rate. So you start. Tonight, same $300 a month into the same boring fund. You're more disciplined than the ghost. Because you have to be. You know what the delay cost. You don't miss a month. You run it straight through to 65. 30 years of contributions. $108,000 of your own money. You end with $340,000. Read those two numbers next to each other. The ghost contributed $36,000 and finished with $570,000.
You contributed $108,000 and finished with $340,000. He put in 1/3 of what you did and walked away with $230,000 more. That is the exchange rate running in reverse on you. The decade you spent the money instead of planting it didn't just cost you $36,000 in missed contributions. It cost you the 40 years that $36,000 would have spent compounding. The bottom of the stack, the part that holds up everything above it. You pulled it out, not in one decision, not on one Tuesday, but across 10 years of $14 moments that each felt like nothing. There is no single purchase to point at. That is the cruelest part. You didn't lose $230,000 at a casino. You didn't make a bad investment. You spent it in pieces so small that none of them ever felt like a choice. The $14 burger, the $60 dinner, the $180 weekend, the subscription that renewed for 3 years after you forgot you had it, the slightly nicer version of a thing you needed anyway. None of it was reckless. All of it was normal. And normal, at the exchange rate of 10 to 1, is extraordinarily expensive.
A $200 dinner at 32. You remember it vaguely. Good wine, someone's birthday, the kind of night that earns its price. You would spend that money again. But that $200, planted at 32 instead of spent, sits in the account for 33 years. At 7%, it becomes just over $1,800. One dinner. That's the price. Not $200, $1,800. That was always the real number on the menu. It just never printed. A $500 weekend trip at 30. Flights, hotel, 2 nights somewhere new. Worth it, probably. Maybe. $500 planted at 30 for 35 years becomes nearly $5,300. The trip cost $5,300 in the currency your 65-year-old self will spend in. You didn't know. Nobody told you. The exchange rate was always running. You just didn't have the app open. None of this means you should have stayed home. None of this means the dinners were wrong or the trips were mistakes. It means the exchange rate is real, and it runs whether you watch it or not. Every dollar you spend in your 30s is quietly spending 10 of your 60s. That was always true. The only question is whether you know it while you're deciding or only after. So here is what changes when you know it. Not everything. You don't stop eating. You don't move into a smaller place and cancel the things you love. You don't become the person who lectures people at dinner about opportunity cost. Nobody likes that person, and he is also usually wrong about which dinners were worth it. What changes is the texture of the small decisions. The $14 drive-thru you turned around for on a Tuesday with nothing pulling you there but inertia, that one looks different now. Not because $14 is a large number, but because you know it isn't $14. It's $140. And $140 is the kind of number you pause at. Not always, not with guilt, just with a quiet awareness that the exchange rate is running, and you are always, in every small moment, on one side of it or the other. The subscription you haven't opened since October. The nicer version of a thing you needed anyway. The round of drinks you bought because the moment felt like it called for it, and $8 is nothing. These are the places the exchange rate lives, in the nothing amounts, in the didn't even think about it amounts. The amounts that disappear so cleanly, they leave no record of ever existing. That's the mechanism. Not one bad decision. 1,000 invisible ones. Here is the second path. You are 35. You know the exchange rate now. You are not the ghost. You can't be. That decade is gone, and nothing brings it back. But you are also not finished. You are 35, which means you have 30 years left on the clock. And 30 years at 7% with $300 a month still builds $340,000 from almost nothing. And your income is supposed to climb from here. The ghost never needed a raise to win. He planted early and let time do what time does. You don't have the early planting, but you have something else. Every raise that lands in your account in your late 30s and 40s gets 25 years of compounding. Every dollar you free up at 38 by downgrading the car or dropping the subscription or choosing the $14 version of the dinner instead of the $60 one, that dollar gets 27 years. Not 40, but 27 years at 7% still turns a dollar into 5. The exchange rate is lower now, but it's still running. The version of you who wins from here doesn't earn more than the version who loses. He just refuses to let the lifestyle grow as fast as the income. Every time the paycheck goes up, he lets life lag by a year. He routes the gap. Not forever, not into austerity, just into the account, quietly, before it has a chance to become a subscription or a nicer version of something he already has. That gap between what comes in and what goes out is the only raw material compounding has ever had to work with. The ghost had it at 25.
You found it at 35. The machine works the same either way. You're just starting it with less runway. At 45, 10 years in, you have roughly $86,000. It feels slow. It looks slow. The curve hasn't bent yet, and the account feels like a number you're dragging uphill $5 at a time. Keep going. Because at 55, 20 years in, something has shifted. You have around $220,000, and the account is now earning more in a strong year from its own size than you're adding by hand. You have become a passenger to your own balance. The thing you built is now larger than the building of it. At 65, 30 years from tonight, you have $340,000. The ghost has $230,000 more than you. That distance is real, and nothing erases it. That is the full price of the decade, paid out. No refund, no appeal. But look at where you're standing against the version of you that closed the app at 35 and told himself he'd start when things settled down. That version has what the government gives him, about $2,000 a month. A floor. Not a house, just a floor. You have the floor and $340,000 sitting behind it. At 4% withdrawal, that's another $1,100 a month. You didn't get rich. You changed the shape of your 70s from surviving to choosing.
And you did it from a Tuesday afternoon when you didn't turn around for the $14 version of a decision you'd already made 1,000 times. Go back to the car, the bag on the passenger seat, the total you tapped without thinking, the number that was designed to disappear. It didn't disappear. It never does. It just moved somewhere. For 35 years, you didn't know which direction it was moving or at what rate. Now you do. $14 is $140. $200 is $2,000. The exchange rate is 10 to 1, and it has been running your entire adult life in the background of every small thing you almost didn't think about.
You can't get the decade back. Nobody gets that back. But the rate still runs from here. Slower now. Still running. And the next $14 you don't turn around for is the first dollar of a different answer to the same question you've been answering without knowing it since you were 25. The dinners are not the enemy. The invisible ones are. The ones that left no memory and built no floor. Those are the ones worth seeing. If you want to keep seeing the numbers most people only run after it's already behind them, subscribe. We do this slowly and honestly before it's too late to matter.